Hey, it's Don. It's Sunday. It's time for another What Sold on eBay video. Again, I just picked some random items. I think I picked 25 or 30 items for what we sold out of the week from just one of our anchor stores, the one that we share with you. Again, we have 2 anchor stores with a total of just like around 41,000 items up right this very minute. So we're going to head over to the screen and I'm going to show you some of what we sold. And again, I just picked some random items. This is just a small percentage of what we sold this week. And it just gives you a broad idea. I don't put in clothing too much anymore or anything like that, or any of the books or any of that. I do have a book in here today because it's something you need to look for. And I think I've talked about it before, but it's sold and I just wanted to readdress the issue. But the first item today is this Streamliner luggage label. This would have literally been stamped on their luggage. They would have stuck this on it. It would have said where it went to, just in case it got lost. That's what the luggage labels were basically for. It kept track of what train it was on and the whole works. That way, if it transferred from one train to the other, they could keep track of them. That's what luggage labels basically are. I took 20 on this one. It was up for a little while. But again, I sell luggage labels all the time. I don't have any problem with a luggage label sitting there for a year. It may sound crazy, but when you get them cheap, you don't have anything into them, and they still sell in the $20 range. A year of listing this is 60 cents. I've got probably 50 cents into buying it in bulk, and then it sits there, you know, for a year for that 60 cents to list, and then it sells, and I'm still making, you know, 16, 17 bucks profit minimum on this. So, you know, I don't worry about that. I don't even rush to get these up anymore because, you know, we've just got so much. We list at our pace, you know, as much as we can get up as often as we can, of course. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. This one here, this is an older one. I had it up for a little while. I should have probably zoomed in maybe a little bit on this one myself. So I'm guilty of it, as I said. But going forward from the point, you know, we don't do this anymore. This has been up probably for a year. I've got 60 cents in listing it. It did sell for full price, $35. I had a bunch of these. This is the last one I had. As you can see, number 1. And it's just a used piece. I walk up on this stuff occasionally. Even at auctions, and sometimes I'll snap it all up. Now, if you get in these for less than, say, $1, you know, or $1, even $2 on some of these, they're always worth selling. Even used, even with some little Mars and things on it, because a new one of these is like 80 bucks or better. So, you know, they're saving 30, 40 bucks. It's a good piece. As long as it doesn't get, you know, smacked again on the car, it's going to last a long time. And you can buff that out too. I just don't mess with buffing it out. As long as the prongs are all on these, I buy them. And I've sold, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of these each year. Just like the OEM radios. Usually if you run into a radio that's pulled out of a GM or any kind of car really that's made in the last 10 or 15 years, I usually can get them, even at Sabres. We used to get them before Sabres closed down, you know, for like $3, $4 bucks for these things. I can get them as cheap as $1 depending on where I go, but OEM radios, just a standard stock radio from a car, are usually worth buying. Even if you can't test them out, I still list them. 9 out of 10 times they were pulled from the car to upgrade the radio to a nicer radio, and they just donate the radio. So they're usually, you know, a good item, like 99% of the time probably, I would guess. I've sold them. I've never tested one. Maybe wrong on my part, you know, but I sell them. And I've never had a return or a complaint ever on any of them, ever. And I've got 3 sitting here somewhere right now, too, in one of these bins behind me. So I do still buy them, even currently. I just got 3 in the last month or so, of the OEM radios. That's a BOLO, I guess you could say. Let's see here. This one I think I had in a haul. I think I got 25. Yeah, 25 out of this one here. And they pay shipping, of course. It's just a small dinky toy. Let's move on to the next one. Comic book again. Zoom in here. Somebody asked about the zoom in. This is what I would say is a zoom in. This is the main photo that shows up on the listing. So when you're scanning through the eBay listings, if you're looking up Patsy Walker, you know, you'll see this. This is the cover itself. So I've chopped it down to show the better part of it. And it zooms in and it gives you the key image, the 2 people. Patsy Walker is the girl on the left. If you're not familiar, she was Miss America at one time, and they made comic books of her. This is from the 40s, I think, yeah, 49. And most of those sell. We didn't make a ton of profit on it. I mean, we paid $1 for it. I got 8 back. It was up for, I think, 2 months, so I've got 10 cents into it. $1.10. We've got $2 max or so into this, and we make $6 out of it. You know, it's not a huge profit. It's a good profit margin, but, you know, we sell a ton of them, so, you know, it makes up. And then I sell lots. I buy them across the board, even if I don't think they're worth a ton of money. If I'm there and there's a ton of comic books and I can buy them in bulk for $1 or so for these 40s, I buy them all. You know, because you're at least going to get $6-10 profit as average on these. That's about the lowest I would go or would have went on this or any of the ones that are in that price range, just because, you know, I can always sell them. You know, they're not hugely quick movers, but, you know, a couple months, who cares? You know, 10 cents. You know, that's not sweating the smalls. I'm looking to the future. I know that my employees can list these and take photos of hundreds of these, you know, at a time, and list, you know, a ton an hour. So, you know, that's why I buy these. You know, it's just feed to go into the mill, I guess you'd call it. I think I picked way too many this week, but we will see how it goes. This is a real picture postcard, $34.50. Somebody wrote in pencil on the top. I didn't try to erase it, but you can erase those in some cases. You don't mess with the pen on these at all. You will ruin the card. And I've also talked about being able to tell if it's photo when it's not glossy. On the right of this image, you can see some trees, like right over there. On the blow up, you can see them better. You can see that fuzz over the trees. That's actually almost a metallic, like a changing of like a rainbowish color tint to the face of the card. If it's not glossy and it looks like that, chances are it's still a real picture postcard. And again, let's look at the back here. It has the Psycho back on it. You know, somebody stamped it on a date there. This came from somebody else's collection. I bought this for $1. And it was from a dealer, believe it or not, too, as I said. Most of my cards are. It had 4 on it. I got them for $1, so I bought like 150 cards from the guy. And he let me have anything that was under 5 for $1 if I bought them all. So, you know, that's what I did. Let's move on here. Hang on, it didn't want to do its thing. And again, here's my card again. I sell these all the time. I've got several places that they sell. And if you want to support me, be my guest and buy one of my cards. I'm not a big promoter on here because my main key thing is doing eBay and teaching. But, you know, I welcome support if anybody wants a way to support me. Here it is. You'll get something out of it. You can kind of see how I pack cards, but I'll move on from there. Oh, yeah, one more thing here. If you sell multiple items, this is a new feature, and I really like this. This wasn't the case a little while ago, and I noticed this out of the spur of the moment. I hadn't been checking on some of the secondary, hang on, that's not what I wanted. Hang on. If you look at feedback now, when you have the multiples, they've pretty much matched it as you would see on Amazon, which I was really surprised because it actually pushes your sales on these individual items. So if you do artwork and you've got things like this, this is a key point on keeping the same listing up. And who cares if you sell a whole bunch all at once? This is a longevity game on this. This is a residual income. It's a marketing tool, as I said in the past, and this is a perfect example. And I didn't notice this when I talked about it last time, but running something up, even if you're not selling them for, you know, a ton or a ton real quick, you build that audience to it, and you're building, you know, stuff. Me talking about it now is probably building an audience for it. So that's what you want to do when you're doing this stuff. And it's not just my postcard or whatever the case may be. It's whatever you're doing, you have the option to do this. And this is something neat, I thought, for eBay, something they added. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. This one was up for like 3 hours. This one was bought by the person who writes the book on these subjects. He's part of the whole inner grouping of Victorian trade cards. He's a pretty decent guy from what I've said. We've talked maybe a few times in emails, as I've talked about in the past. This one's sold because it's Grant arriving in California. This is a specific time. I probably should have looked up the date on it, but I didn't think it was a key issue on when this would have been made. I'm sure if I just did a quick Google search, I would have been able to specifically know the exact date that this would have happened. It was probably a national trip, and it was announced in the whole works maybe after the war or something. But this one sold right off the bat. I took $65 for it. I might have been able to let it ride and just get $75 out of it because it is a scarce card. Anything with Ulysses S. Grant, the president, as well as our the Union General during the Civil War, it always sells, and especially with California, the gold rush, all the stuff going on in that area at this time is a big plus to this card. It's for baking powder. Nothing fancy. I've only had a few from Aunt Sally. I would say it's a scarce one. I don't really remember where this was made, but I am honestly assuming this was made in California somewhere. One thing that I thought was odd is that they actually have California in reverse Why it would be backwards, maybe that was a printer's error, in all honesty, I was thinking. But anyway, let's move on. Good seller, good quick move on that one. No, this is a hand-tinted one. Yeah, hand-tinted. And if you look around the trees, this is another thing on hand-tinted. Look at the trees to the left of the word "the" on Old Mill. You see how the green is just blotched all over. It's just a blob. That is a hand-tinted. That is a perfect sign. And then look, just around that, you see the blue, the what would be or should be clouds. They've just blued over that, so the clouds now look like a dark blue versus the sky is blue. Like behind the word Old Mill, that is a baby, real light baby blue. That's a watercolor that was washed across this card. And they didn't actually follow the lines when it comes to the clouds. The clouds shouldn't have been painted blue. They usually paint those gray or a touch of white on the edges or something like that on the real fancy ones. But that is a key factor. You see the greens just blotched all over. It's darker in one area, and then you can see down at the bottom here on the right side where the grass is, right where it comes up to the street. You can see it's got like literally a watercolor look to it. It looks different. It doesn't look printed. You look at it with a loupe. There's no dots, nothing like that. If this was a vintage card, you know, as it is a vintage card from like circa 1905, 1910, you'd see dots of some kind showing you that that was a printed green across the grass or across the sky or whatever the case may be, whichever color you're talking about. But that's just a little bit on that. Let's see here. Now, I've talked about Raphael Tuck & Sons all the time. If you're not paying attention, Raphael and Tuck always sells. There's a little logo on the bottom right. It's kind of hard to see, and if you probably don't know what it looks like, you'd probably miss it. But spend a minute. Do a search on Raphael Tuck & Sons, on even postcards. They sell postcards, they sell greeting cards, they sell gift cards, they sell Christmas tags, booklets, souvenirs. The stuff they make, that's just immense. They worked and were the printers to the King and Queen of England for a long time. And I think some of the cards even say that on there. But anything with Raphael Tuck, and I've said this before, even pre-1940 sometimes sells, but mostly pre-1920-ish through 1860s, 70s, Raphael Tuck, I always sell. Everyone. You know, it's just pretty much a given. There's collectors that they are trying to collect. There's a couple of them that are competing with each other, trying to collect an example of everyone they may. Maybe they're with the university. I'm not going to give away any names because, you know, I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything on what they buy or don't buy. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. Again, another Raphael Tuck. This one I think was bought by the same person. You can see in the bottom left there underneath the A of a happy, Raphael Tuck. And there's a logo. I don't remember if it's on. Yeah, here it is. Here we can go right here. That's the logo you want to look for on pretty much anything vintage that's paper, that's fancy. That's the key. And it won't always say Raphael Tuck & Sons, but RT and S. Raphael Tuck & Sons. Let's move on here. Real picture postcard. Now, this gentleman who bought this one here bought $158 worth of postcards in one day, just out of nowhere. I'm assuming they were probably in his cart, and I just don't always pay attention to that kind of things, like, you know, watchers and things like that always, because it's just not as key to my business. I don't mind if something sits there for a long time. So, but this was a really nice card. I loved the image. I collect vintage car images, and I do some illustrations so of those, and then I do some marketing of images and things like that. But this image was really good on it. This is an example of things that you can use the design of the item and use your own artwork. Like if I did a illustration of like the car sitting in front of the building and cropped it differently or something, no one could come after me ever because the actual image is something altered. It's actually a one-off artwork that I could produce myself and make multiple copies of. So you can't necessarily use the image itself, but you can use that as a basis to do your own artwork or your own image, you know, from that. And rule of thumb on this one here, this one was taken in 1910. So the gentleman who took this would have to be like 150 for it to still be valid. So I could technically come back openly and reproduce this card legally and make mass quantities of this card as a photo postcard myself. The rule of thumb is it has to be 70 years and a day from the day the person died who took the photo for you to be able to use it, and it'd be open source material. Once that happens, it's open source material. Now, I couldn't prove who took this or who didn't take this, but I can sure as heck prove that this card is from 1910, and the person who took it was obviously someone, at least over 10 or 15 years old. It's an adult who took it. It's an advertising piece. It's opened. There's no copyright on it. There's no anything. This is open source now. This type of material can be used by anybody. And that's just how the law works. 70 years in a day. It has to be over 70 years to be open source from the day the person died who took the photo. That's just an issue was brought up the other day in a question, so I thought this would be a perfect example of here. Now, I'm not going to produce, a copy of this. I do, as I said, save photos, so I do use copies or images or cars or something from old photos for my artwork. I draw it from freehand from that photo, and I might just use the car and make my own background up or something along that line here. But maybe I'll show you some of those in the future here. But those kind of things do sell, and that is another opportunity. Even like Santa Clauses from cards and things like that. You can use images as long as it's altered from an image. You can't use anything direct copyright, violations from that item. But anyway, next item. Another one, this I think was from the same person, if I'm not mistaken. It has a little damage there, but it's a really interesting image. It's a double one. I got a whole bunch from the same town, and I've sold, one every month or two from the same assortment. Now, I got a ton of different cards at the same time, but this is just literally from the city image, and, I had like 15 or 20 of these. Somebody numbered them. You can see the number, just to give you an idea. But interesting images like this usually sell regardless, and that's what I took for it. I got $12.50 for it. So I've got, maybe 50 cents in the listing it, maybe $1. I probably didn't pay $1 for this one because of the rip, probably 50 cents. 'Cause that's usually how this works when I get cards. If they're ripped, I usually pay less than the standard dollar fee if I'm buying in bulk, buying in bulk. And I do buy bulk pretty much everything from, auctions or pickers. They'll buy them from an estate sale or wherever they get them from. It doesn't matter. Let's move on to the next one. Another one, I believe this is the same person or another one of the Michigan collectors that does business with me. Again, as I said all the time, look at the top, postcard. It's written the same way. Back's the same, regardless of what's written on there or how it is. And I get questions asked, does it matter if there's someone's address on it, or does it matter if there's a writing on the back? It doesn't matter at all for the most part. There are some collectors, very few, that have to have it a certain way. Or they maybe want to use one and an unused one because it's a scarce card or something like that. That's, completely understandable, but I never worry about what's written on the back. And in some cases, there's writing on the back that makes the card worth more, or it's autographed by someone famous, or something really interesting happened in there, they're writing about it, or it's a real picture postcard and that image is really incredible on the back. They're talking about what's on the front of the card. Those always add to the value of the card, always. That would be better than having a blank image, not knowing what's on the front, than having something written across the back. That just adds to the value in many cases. So just keep that in mind. And now this one I think I showed in a haul. Christie's. Now, I've actually dealt with Christie's. They've sold a few things. We've sent them many items, in the past. If it's worth more than $1,000, they'll tell you that. You'll be able to judge, especially if they have specific sales coming up and you've got items they want. There's Heritage. There's Skinner. There's a ton of auction houses that that can help you appraise things too. So look outside the box. A lot of people don't think about these ones because they're strictly online sellers and don't think about other sites that sell as well too. This is a consignment only place, but their catalogs for the items sell all the time. I sold this full price. It wasn't up but maybe a month because I think it was in last month's one of my haul videos. So I always look for these things. I've sold every Christie's auction book like this I've ever gotten, regardless of what it was. I think Jackie O was the last one I sold. And then I've sold, ones for other famous people as well, too. So, like the Russell Crowe one that just came up, if you have a copy of that would probably sell in another year or two. You're probably going to get $50 for it. They only make a limited quantity. They obviously keep their costs down, but they make enough for all the people that would be interested. I'm not sure if this was something that they would have had to pay for to get the potential bidders, but they might be in the club, or there might be some bidding process that you pay to get in or something like that. I'm not really sure. Or it might be included in the fees to run this and the commission taken out of the people who donated, or the family or the estate, or however it works like that. But anyway, let's go on to the next one here. Movie posters. I saw movie posters quite often, or at least some sort of poster weekly, pretty much all the time. Heaven's Gate, look it up. There's a big story behind the movie. I've seen it. back in the day. But look it up. You'd be surprised on the story of this movie if you're not familiar. I'm sure someone down here watching this is going to know right off the bat what I'm talking about. But again, I like finding interesting facts out. History buff. I'm a big-time sci-fi nerd geek. I love Dragon Con Sci-Fi, all the movie-related items. So even if I didn't make a ton of money on movie stuff, I'll always have it around because I always like looking at it. I like, piddling around with it and having, it on the wall and all over the place. But anyway, let's move on from there. Full price on these. Art Deco, nothing fancy, gold-filled. This is about the best you're going to do. And I say white background all the time, unless there's no other way. There was no other way I could get these to sparkle or without sparkling and phasing out everything with the white background. I've tried and tried. We went back and forth. Jewelry is one of the few exceptions that I will put a different color background on. I wouldn't list this on Amazon or that matter, maybe on Etsy or someplace, but I usually sell these better on eBay. So just keep that in mind. Vintage jewelry, 20s or before, almost always sells better on eBay. And it's got a fairly high rate of, pay through customers without issues. So anyway, that was a good profit. I maybe paid $1 for these. Or actually, this came in a bulk lot. I do buy bulk lots of jewelry from pickers, from garage sales, from estates, from church sales and things like that too. It's usually an easy way to find bulk vintage jewelry is these sales. This is a Christmas card, and again, talking about zooming in. This one here, I cropped it just to the card, so everything else around it is white when you look at the key image. The whole card is right there with some minimal background around it. This one was hard to decide on what to center in on it, so I just put a cross image of it. This is a panel card, a folding panel, early Christmas. I took $50 on this. It was up. This is one of those things that showed up just after Christmas. I think we put it up in January. If I had this up a little sooner, I might have been able to sell it for decent money. And again, as I say, I always put up for like 3 times what I expect to get out of it on a general rule. It was up at $125. I marked it down because it had a bunch of watchers. This was, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I don't mark down a lot, so I don't worry about, any 14-day waiting period or anything like that. Usually it goes up, and then I'll take it off, or it'll sell, and then I won't worry about that, and then I'll rotate what goes on sale if I'm putting sales on. A lot of the time through the year, I'm not putting a ton of sales on. I don't really need to. I'm playing the longevity game, the residual income, and the offers come in if they're good items usually. And again, I took $50 on this. It was a very attractive card. It just isn't bright, so I took $50 on it, as I said. Nice one. I buy, Christmas card collections. Knowing how these are constructed, knowing the construction on these cards helps you date them. Because this is actually multi-pieces put together to make this thing here. So anyway, lovely card actually. Let's move on to the next one. Now, I showed some of these in hauls, and I've showed them many times. All these little tiny figures, you buy them in bulk. You can usually get a big bag or a box of these at a garage sale. Look for the ones that looked marbled, or the ones that are marked marks, the 60s versions or before. These are 50s. Just an oddball mix of them. 3 of them are from one set. The multicolored yellowish colored on the right is from a different set, I would say. They're nothing fancy. They're early. Hard plastic. I think I took, we made $12 on these. And again, I got like 5 cents into listing these, and I showed them in haul. These were just literally from a month ago, and maybe 5 cents into purchasing them if you spread out the cost of the big bulk lot we bought these with. I believe this was in a haul too. I got a bunch of these. Now, I buy these book and record things all the time. You can buy them sometimes hanging from a rack at a thrift store, for like a bag of like 6, 8 of these for, like $3 or $4. If they're $1 or less, I'll buy them, especially depending on the topic. Any of the Disney ones usually sell. You're usually going to get, for your $1, $8 to $15 back on average on any of the good ones. Now, you got to research these, but it'll give you an idea on what to look for. And I find these all the time. You can find them at pretty much any thrift store. Garage sales will have them. Church sales for sure. Even, let's say, antique malls and flea markets. I paid $1 a piece for a bunch of these. All the Mercer Mayer ones sold all to the same person for $10 a pop. So $3 I just turned into $30 with no effort at all. It's a quick list. You've got, 3 photos is what I do on every one of these. Front, back, open with the vision or, with the record showing. White background. This one maybe could have been a little closer, but I don't like to cut too much on these type of items for the most part, because I had to stick it at an angle so you can kind of see that it's an open folder. But it sold. It was a quick, easy move on this one here. And again, I don't always take my photos, so anyway, let's move on to the next one. Yeah, I think I show them all here. Another one. And I sell a couple of these, the book and records, almost every single week. I buy whenever I run into these, I usually find a couple that are good ones, and I always buy them, like Black Cauldron or Tron or Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, Superman, Raiders of the Lost Ark, any of the vintage 70s stuff, Bed Knob and Broomsticks, or, you know, Mary Poppins, Fox and the Hound, any of those Disney ones usually sell in those, even some of the Sesame Street. Sesame Street doesn't sell as well as those. Let's go to the next one here. Postcards. Now, I had a comment here that, you know, I was underpricing some of my postcards in the California area. I look up every one of my postcards, every single one, and if you have one that you think I underpriced, you can just please add a comment so I can just kind of see what you're talking about, because I've looked these up, and I even went back and tried to look at the ones that, you know, were in the video that they were talking about. You know, there's just no sales at the prices that were mentioned. You know, in the $150 range for the cards that we're talking about. Yes, there are cards in, you know, California section that go for thousands, but as I've brought up myself, I've actually talked about those cards specifically in weeks ago videos. Yes, there's some Tahoe ones that go for that, and I've talked about Tahoe in probably 6 videos already, so, you know, just pay attention to some of the earlier videos and you'll see I've addressed all those issues on my cards as well too. So, you know, I do very good research on the postcards. You know, maybe there's one on Worth Point someone found somewhere that went once, you know, 2 or 3 years ago for a high dollar. But for the most part, I'm up on my postcards here, because that is one of our bread and butters. This replaced my FBA books. So, you know, just FYI, we did a ton of money on FBA books. Now we do a ton of money on postcards. You know, I just replaced it. If something goes bad in one area, find another area that works. Was I a postcard seller before that? No. So, you know, I found an area and found a niche, and boom, off I go. You know, I'm cutting out the middleman for you. You don't have to mess with FBA to figure it out. You can just do something different. It doesn't have to be postcards, though. You can find your own niche. There's hundreds and hundreds of niches. Every day I talk to somebody, or somebody sends me a comment about another niche that I would have never thought of myself. So every day there's some other option out there to do something different. Next one here. Now, I bought a ton of these lead. I bought them almost by the pound. I've got, you know, nothing into these at this point here. I sold a ton of these. I sold 3 or 4 to the same person. These are just like Warhammer role-playing game pieces here. They're smaller, 30 millimeter. They're probably modern, the modern pewter type without the lead in it, I would say. But they may have been even hand-cast in someone's garage. These kind of things still sell. I sell pretty much every one I put up. It may take a little time to sell, but you got 60 cents into listing it. You know, you're getting $6 back over the time. I don't even have that much into this, I don't think. It's probably about 45 cents into listing it. So, may not seem like a lot, but I picked up a bunch of this in bulk, and it's easy to list 3 photos. Boom, off it goes. Matter of moments to list this. Matter of moments to take the photo. So that's what you're looking for. If you can get it in bulk, and again, I have, you know, people that sell for me, so, or that pick up stuff for me, so I don't really have to worry. I've got people that list it for us too, so again, I don't have to worry. It's just, it's feed for the mill, as I've said before. I think I actually showed this in the haul, maybe not, but these magazines sell well. I've sold a ton of these telephone company magazines. Now, those are ones that were probably published for, you know, people who worked at the company. Ohio Bell, I sold a bunch of those, and I've sell every one of those Ohio Bell from like the 20s through the 30s and 40s for like 10 or 15 bucks a pop. So, and I think I actually have some employee-only magazines coming up here in just a few moments too. Here's the other one too, another 10. I talked about these light therapies. I took 20 for it. That's about average, as I said. I pick up these all the time. I don't know how many of these I've sold. I lost track at this point, but I pick them up every time I see them. People just think it's some junk quack stuff, but it's actually condition sad. Look it up. I'm not going to go into detail. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's the loss of light during winter, basically. My wife has issues with it. We have lights here as well too. I try to have, you know, multiple lights. You know, we try to brighten the area the best we can. But let's move on from there. Let's see here. Indian Territory items. I pulled this one out just for that. This is an old one. As I said, I've changed how we do the photos. This is a perfect example of the mistakes that I made when I started. This photos have been up for a while. I've got maybe $1.20. This is a 2-year-old listing. So I have $1.20 into it. Would I pull it down at 2 years? No, because it's going to sell. Indian Territory sells it. So I don't worry if stuff's been up 2-3 years. If I have $2 into listing it, it's been up for 3 years, I still wouldn't worry. It's sold for $24.50. You know, it's a thing here. You got to just take a chance on some items. You got to make sure you've done your research. If you've done your research, it doesn't matter, you know, if something sits for a couple years. It does not matter to us. Overall, it's the bottom line. What's coming in? Are we making enough? Is this working? Is my ratio of fees to my ratio of sales a profitable venture? And yes, it's very profitable, so I can't, you know, see any justification to take items down that have been up that long. There's no justification because they still sell daily. I can probably pull up an item that's been up more than you know, a year, more than 2 years, almost every day of the week. It's quantity up, it's sell through rate. Again, doesn't mean anything in here. So it's quantity up, it's profit margin at the end of the day. You know, $7.50 a day or whatever your call is on what you're doing a day. Are you making enough to make this work? And we have no issues with it whatsoever. It's a cost of doing business. It's part of the overhead that we run. It's part of an overhead that a store would run if you're running a brick and mortar store. It's the same basic thing, having stuff on the shelf, even if it doesn't sell every day. You look at the profit margin. If I had, you know, 10 of these up and one sells a year, and the cost of listing them, you know, versus the cost of the profit for that one I sold that year. You know, that's what you're looking at, you know. $2 investment, is it worth $2 for me to make, you know, a $20 profit? Yeah, it is. So, you know, I don't worry about that. So, you know, I've had comments, you know, that's crazy keeping stuff up that long. No, it's not. I make the money back on it all the time. You know, it's how you get this amount of stuff up. It sells. You'll have somebody buy something new that just went up that, you know, maybe you never had this type of item up before, and they're going to see your store. It's going to show the suggestions when they're checking out, and you're going to get more sales from it. That's how it works. You got to have enough stuff up in that same area. You got to pick some niches and have a bunch up in that niche to make yourself a key player in that niche. That's how this works. You draw it in and become part of that niche, like a big percentage of that niche. And that's where you're making your money at. I pass up some niches. It just depends on what you're looking to do with your life and your business. And, you know, I like certain things, and I stick to my certain niches because of that. Plushes. I don't sell a ton of plushes. I don't buy and source a ton of plushes because they are big, but they do sell. Early Garfield, you know, it's not a huge profit. I probably got $1 or something into this thing, maybe 50 cents. It sat there for, you know, maybe 45 cents worth of listing fees. I don't worry about time. I worry about money into it. So if I have, you know, a year or two into something, but, you know, I have little into listing it and little into investing it, I don't worry if it sits there for a little longer. It's going to sell. I think I've sold every Garfield plush I've gotten, as long as they're vintage ones, 80s. Odie sells too. There's a whole set of those even. You know, I've had the Odie and the whole works. John, I think his name is the owner, and then Garfield as well. Another postcard. Now these big cities, Santa Cruz, they're not big sellers. They're not high dollar postcards. And again, I looked these all up. So, you know, I know what the market is on these items. This is, you know, top dollar. I put this over what they usually sell for. These are just common cards. This is from the 30s or so. You can tell by looking at the cars and, you know, the way the construction of the card is and the whole works. And again, I do have another video coming out for postcards. I hope to have it up next week, actually. We've been a little behind with business as well. It's a hard pace to keep up sometimes. I'm still trying to get out the videos and the whole works, and trying to justify some of my time and stuff in, you know, ways that I'm using it. So I'm trying to get the best stuff I can get up and save some of my time here at this point. And again, I try to answer everybody's emails. I try to answer all your questions. You know, I want to help. You know, I have goals in mind of myself. You know, I'm trying to, you know, better myself, of course, too. So just keep that in mind. I do my best on what I can do. So I may not answer every single comment immediately or as timely as I would like, but I do try to get to them. This one I paid $1 for. I know it says 2, but again, bulk buy. $12.50 sold for. Jewelry, again, I do sell quite a bit of jewelry too. A couple $100 a week on average. This week was more than that, actually. I'm just showing you a couple pieces. You see the first one there, and then there's another one here, $34.50. Whiting and Davis, and this might even have been in a haul video from a month or so ago. It wasn't up very long at all. N97, nope, it wasn't up very long. N for necklace and 97. That just gives you an idea. I've got at least 97 necklaces up. I've got hundreds of pieces of jewelry up across a couple of accounts. So, another item here that I always look for, anything that says bakery, labels, stickers, poster stamps, cards, usually has a decent potential to sell. Not always a big mover, but you're paying pennies for them. You're going to get like 8, 10, 15 bucks on average for most every one of these dairy and bakery items. Dairy and bakery. Just a small bolo there, I would say. Let's see here. Now, I brought this one up because I had some questions on records and packing and all kinds of things on records. Now, records like this, this is not vinyl. 78s are not vinyl. Just to set the record straight here, I've had a lot of people talking about colored vinyl and, you know, brown vinyl. This is not vinyl. This is a shellac. This is made out of the same things that you coat furniture with. It's shellac. That's why they're so fragile and you can't ship them flat with no cushioning and such forth. You treat them like china. But this is the common color for many of these. So, you know, when I see these, I do look for, or look through the records. Usually the ones that are this color are in the right era of jazz, good jazz records. And usually you can tell perfect is probably the most common label you'll see these colored records on. This one I sold for $60. It was up for, oh geez, like 16 months it was up. It's a good record. But these are rare. There's not a lot of collectors for these items. So some of this, again, is residual long-term game on this type of item. Now, don't worry if it's a long-term game. I made 60 bucks on a $1 investment. I've got, you know, maybe $2 at the very, very most in the listing this, at the most. And, you know, and then the fee. So, you know, I made 45 bucks for my time. And I've got this huge quantity of stuff up. That's how this works. I've got enough up so I don't have to rush to take it. I don't have to worry if a $1 item sits there for, you know, a year or two, or if 500 items that cost, you know, $1 a piece sit on my shelf. I usually paid for them. This was bought in a lot. I don't just buy one record when I buy records. So I bought a bunch of records for $1 a piece. I am sure, I guarantee you 100% that 1 or 2 records sold immediately from this lot and paid for the entire purchase of that day, and boom, I actually had a profit probably that same week or so. So that's how I look at this. I don't have anything to this. So once they're up, the only thing I have into it whatsoever, if anything, is the new listing fees from that day on. So let's say it's been up for 3 years. You know, I've got $1.80 into listing this. That's my total cost now into this item was the $1.80. So it's selling for $60. I've made 50 bucks out of it. You know, that's just how you look at this. It's a numbers game on top of being, you know, a residual income practice. Like a commission basis almost. Okay, so the next item here, this is a Mexico card. Mexican cards don't sell for a ton of money, but this was an interesting early one. This was borderline whether I was going to list it for a high price or not. It did sell fairly well and fairly quickly. So again, most Mexico cards don't sell very well. There's not a lot of these up from this area, so that was a plus for this one. Next one here. Here's another example of magazines. Now, I said I had marked them down. I've got a ton of magazines, and you never know what something's worth. There's no way to know at all what some of these items are worth because there's no comps on here. So people ask, how do I know what something's worth? I don't for the most part. But I can tell you that I looked up employee magazines. Now, this is a standard oil company, Ohio. It's an Ohio gas company. I think they're still around. I'm not even sure. I don't even really pay much attention to, you know, which gas I get. I get it from a specific place, the same time or same place every week. So, not really sure that. But to look something up like this, I looked up employee magazines, just simply as Google, or not a Google search, a eBay search on employee magazines in the completed auctions, and then I compared what was up there and looked. You know, average price for any of the employee magazines, and there are other ones that showed, and there were other examples of this up, was in like the $10 or $15 range. So I put them up at $45. I take a chance. It's an oil-related item. Some of those can go for higher money. These were a little earlier than some of the ones I saw. I took 10 bucks a piece on them. I have no problem with that at all. I paid $1 a piece for them. They were up for maybe 4 months, I think, maybe at the most. I might even have shown these in a haul video from a couple months back. If you're not aware, I've got almost 200 videos up right now, so you're welcome to go back and check. Same type of topics, same items you're seeing right this second I've discussed since day one. This has always been my mode of producing videos and what I do. You know, I'm not looking for this super quality on everything. Yeah, I'm trying to improve my quality, but the content is what I'm looking for. The help it gives and the patronage from you subscribers, which I completely appreciate in every way, shape, and form. So anyway, Again, I sold a bunch to the same person. As soon as I put them on sale, I sold like 15 of these, $10 a piece, $150. $15 investment, I just turned into $150. And this is just this week, so you know, you can kind of get an idea on how much money I'm going through here. So you know, it's a numbers game. Summer is not an issue for us right now. Again, this is why. You know, I'm showing you just random items, just a small percentage. Another one, $10. I'm not going to show you them all. They're all the same. $10. $10. And again, I think there was 2 different people buying, and I took 10, I think, to 15 was the average on those two people buying them. Luggage labels, again, addressed them. Greyhound bus, even. It doesn't matter what the luggage label is for. It's vintage in appearance. Greyhound itself has collectors, believe it or not. I saw Greyhound booklets, Greyhound maps, luggage tags, metal tags, Greyhound. Anything with Greyhound can sell. Again, not everything from Greyhound's going to sell for a ton of money, but you buy these in bulk. You know, I can buy a pad of these sometimes, you know, get 10 or 15 of these, 20 of these, all identical, for, you know, just a couple bucks when they're in a pad. Now, if they're separate, usually you're going to pay 50 cents to $1 a piece, but in a pad, you can usually get lucky enough to get them cheaper. And then you're going to sit them up there, you throw out $12.50 and you let them ride. You sell one, you list another one. You sell one, you list another one. Don't list a bunch at the same time. It muddies the water a little bit. When there's only one up, they think there's only one available. So it's a perceived value. Now, I've talked about perceived value. That's all this is. It's a perceived value. It's a numbers game, perceived value. And doing your research, that's how this all works. And it's always worked this way for us. Let's see here. Camera equipment, again, buy it in bulk. I buy, you know, bins of this stuff sometimes. I don't care if I know what the item is. I'll look it up when I get home. If it's cheap enough, I'll look up enough items when I'm going to the hall to look for this item. So let's say I'm going to look at a bunch of camera equipment. I'll look through a few items till I know I got my money. With anything I do, and I've said this before, if I don't see enough money there, I'm going to pass it by. Just because it's quantity in this type of item doesn't mean it's going to be worth $150 or whatever you pay for it. If you got a bunch of toys, as I've shown, $20 for a huge lot of toys, you can pretty much always make money. $20 in camera equipment, yeah, if it was a big bin as much as that toy was, yeah, I'd probably definitely make money. And I wouldn't question it. But if you're spending $100, $150 on a huge lot of stuff like this, you need to know at least something about it to know that you're going to get your money out. This I took 50 on. And I've got $1.20 or so into listing it. Nothing into it because it's been paid for. The whole lot was bought and paid for within a couple days of it being listed. I had a lens in the lot. The lens went for like $280, damaged with a bent rim. Somebody replaced the top end. They told me what they were going to do after the fact. They even came back and said it was fixed, great, awesome. It was like a $600 lens, and I made a ton of money off the lens for me, and they fixed it. They spent, you know, a couple hours fixing this thing and got some big money out of it. So more power to them. I sell a lot of stuff that people will do stuff with and make money on top of what I made off of it. So it's all a numbers game. Like people talk about, you know, your pickers know you do this, or what about pickers and how do you feel? You know, I sell stuff that other people turn around and resell as well too. I don't know every market, and I don't expect to. I expect a certain percentage of profit. So if I'm making a certain percentage, I don't care what somebody else does with it. Am I going to lose sleep if somebody made a fortune off of something I sold? You know, you know, maybe it's my fault. So it's a learning experience. So next time I'm going to look up that item a little better, or I'll know next time when I see that item, hey, I know that I'm going to get this much money for it. So it's a learning experience. I don't make a mistake, and you don't make a mistake. You gain a learning experience. You gain some knowledge from it. If you know, hopefully you do anyway. I try to never make the same mistake more than once. This is just a paper label. It's all crinkled up. You can see it. I could have ironed this out. Again, if you're unaware, that's an insider secret. You can iron these things out. At the time, I didn't know this. This was up for a couple years. You know, I've got 160 or something in the listing this. I took $14.50 out of it. You know, so even at that, it was paid for the day it came in pretty much. I've got nothing into purchasing it. So all I've got is that, you know, 160 or so into listing it. And then the fees. So I've got about $2.50 in fees, and I made about 10 or 12 bucks off this. You know, who cares? This is my bread and butter as well too. This is where we make a ton of it. We don't sell a ton of these at high price, these wrinkled stuff like this, but I sell a bunch of them. You know, and again, I don't worry if they're wrinkled. I don't worry if there's some damage. I don't worry if there's like a rip. I think there's actually a rip, yeah, up at the top left. You know, they still will sell depending on the item. It just takes research. Here's a crinkled postcard. You can see it very clearly. It's listed in hard creasing. Hard creasing is what you describe that, and a tear to the upper right, which is right up here on the right of the card, to the horizontal crease. and I still took $12.50 on it. It's a decent image. The image itself, who knows what they're going to do with it? Maybe they're going to mount it to something. Maybe it's for a collection. It's a scarcer card. It's just not in the greatest condition. So, you know, even bad condition cards will sell. Another California one. Now, these mobile home ones and mortuaries sell very well. These chrome ones, these ones that look like real photos, these are not real photos, they're chrome cards, basically. These will sell fairly well. Not huge high dollars, but we sell a lot of them. And we sell them for $8 to $15 on average for any decent one. And these are from the 50s and 60s, mind you. So just get a look at this. This is what you're looking for in a chrome if you're looking for it. I don't go out of my way to buy a ton of these. I do get them in all the time in big bulk purchases, so yeah, they're worth it. So if you go to an auction or estate sale, you're probably going to end up trying to buy a whole box of these would be your best bet. You know, not just chromes, but a box of mixed like circa 1900 through 1950s. Try and buy the whole lot for a lot cheaper. Think about how much you have into each card is what I look at when I'm buying these things. So if you can buy 200-300 cards for $50, you're doing very well. As long as you know you're going to get your money out. Say you see 2 or 3 cards out of that couple hundred lot for $50 that you know are a real picture or something, and they're going to bring you a good profit off those 2 or 3 cards. By all means, you better sure as heck buy that for that $50. Let's move on here. We're getting down there. Tobacco card again. I think we took $14.50 on. Oh no, actually, this sold full price. Full price. Now these don't sell for a huge high dollar on these. These are 1880s or so. Yeah, 1888 on this one here. But there's a few cards, and there's some collectors who are just getting into it that, you know, don't either know the price or they have no good source to get these, like the old timers. So, you know, the newbies into there sometimes will pay the higher price. So this one did sell full price. He bought a couple cards actually for that. So we did very well on these too. Next one here. I think I just showed this one in a haul. It sold right off the bat, so it's out the door already. It worked. I cleaned it up a little bit more, got some of the dinge off the face. Usually I don't do that, but you can see how it was. I wanted it to look a little nicer than that. I didn't realize I didn't clean it so well until after it's sold. That's my personal mistake. As I said, everybody makes mistakes. I do as well. Lesson learned. I am going to clean every single one from this point on, but it's sold. And again, as I said, I even sent a notice to the purchaser before I mailed it out that it was cleaned, and he looks nice now. So sorry about the image. I apologized for the image quality actually to him. That's just going the extra mile and trying to make sure you got good customer service. So anyway, this one I sell a bunch of these. Pretty much all these cards. And now let me see if you can see the size in it here. Geez, somebody's washed out the ruler. Or maybe I actually, okay, it's in here. I'm sorry. Usually we put a ruler in here. I guess this one here, I think we tried to shoot for just the butterfly image itself, because I think that's brighter. Yeah, that's what we did this time. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think we did that with a couple other ones now. I don't put the ruler in every one. If you're not going to put the ruler in there, you sure as heck better put the size either in the title or right here in the condition one. This page you see here is what you see from your phone. You don't want people to have to look any farther than they have to. Time is money, and people when they're looking are really quick on looking sometimes on the phone, or when they're, you know, shopping for stuff, when they're sitting there waiting for somebody or doing whatever, whenever they're shopping off their phone. I try to put it as accessible as I can, and I've talked about this in the past. This one sells because people love insects. So insects sell all the time, these vintage insect items. And in a Google search, I tried to put the most important things. This should have said lovely. I think the person missed a typo, one of my listers. No big deal. I'm not going to be upset. This one sold very well and sold quickly. But again, on a Google search, this will show up fairly well. This will be a popper, an eye popper, because you'll see the bug flying right off of it. So anyway, that's just kind of what I look for too. It's not just always about just eBay. Yeah, you want to have a good search result in eBay as well, but more and more people are being drawn in because of some of these changes eBay's done from Google searches. Like they'll be typing in, not even looking to buy an item, you know, like this. They'll be typing in moth, insect, lovely, or something, or vivid moth. They saw moth or something, and this is going to show up on a Google search for images. They'll click it over to the image search and be looking, and boom, this will show up, and they go, wow, that's neat. That's how some of these sales happen. It has nothing to do with eBay even these days, more and more. And you've got to roll with the punches. Don't just lock yourself into thinking that it's all about eBay search results too, because again, eBay is trying to be more like Amazon. That's why I keep telling people it's a good thing. That's why when you're searching and just going to Google search, it's going to bring you to Amazon when you're looking for items. I don't necessarily look for a specific site for an item always when I'm trying to track down stuff or stuff for my business or whatever. I'll just do a Google search and it'll pull me to the correct spot, or I can, you know, zoom down through there to figure out what's you know, the best source, the cheapest source, or whatever the case may be. So take it out of the box. Don't just be thinking about how these show up on eBay. Yeah, that's you know, a good 70% of the sale, but 30% of the sale too, or 30% of the views and getting people into your listings and getting to know who you are, has to do with, you know, people finding you on other avenues or sources, like having your stuff up showing on Facebook, or, you know, cross-promoting listings, or, you know, having them so they do show up on a Google search. So, you know, that's just part of the search criteria, what I look for. Marshall Field. Now, Marshall Field's a company that's been around for a long time. These don't go for a ton of money, most of Marshall Field's cards, but I see the value in this one here. This is a fully engraved front. Just an incredible job to do this image. Now, I've done some engraving in, you know, in college and things, and I've messed around with it here at the house occasionally. I've done some stampers on my own and carved into rubber and things like that. So I know how hard it is to do this. Somebody with a high power magnification in 1880s took a steel plate or a copper plate, a plain, flat, smooth copper or steel plate, and hand engraved with a steel tipped or diamond tipped tool of some sort, engraver's die or something along the line. I've got a few early ones here, and I've got some that I own too to do some of this. But they engraved into a plate this tiny aspect. It was done life-sized, the exact size that they printed this at. And it's just phenomenal work on these cards. I'm dumbfounded and awe at some of the work on these cards. As an artist, as someone who has done, I've done recreations of like a dollar bill at life size before in the past. And there's somebody who's done them, you know, as a, you know, artistic expression and passed them off. Not like counterfeited them, only drew one side, but he'd exchanged them for merchandise. He exchanged them for food and meals, and people would end up having these as a work of art. And in the long run, the person or the person who let the person swap these, like the business, like the employee had to front the money. So basically, the employee bought the bill from this guy and paid the bill for whatever he was getting. And in the long run, these people had a large return on their investment because it was worth a lot of money. I know that's a little off stream, but, you know, engravings, I'm into this stuff, and I always look out for this. And this sold for $50 just because of that. This is probably the highest Marshall Field card that was sold at this point when I sold this one in the entire market of eBay. Engravings. I look for these things. I have, you know, people, it's on lists of businesses and stuff that sell, or antique malls and stores that get stuff in to find me these items. If they come in, call me, especially in quantity. So I look for them, and not just to sell all the time, because I love looking at them. I'm an aficionado of art and vintage and collectible and sci-fi and the whole genre of the artsy fartsy people and stuff. You know, I'm just a nutso on this stuff. So, you know, this is part of why I do this, and I love talking about it. I love looking at it. I love buying it and selling it and being around it. So anyway, and the last one today. Now, I've talked about bookmarks. This isn't a full-fledged bookmark here. I think it even says bookmark on it somewhere. Let me take a look here. And not only is it a bookmark, it's a poem card advertising. This would be like a limerick, like a jingle of on TV or on the radio of a, you know, 1950s product or 60s product, or even some of the new one, like Coke commercials and things. This would have been that same thing of the day. This is 1881. It's a nice, oh yeah, there it is, bookmark on the top. I went right by it. But it's a decent card. It's sold right off the bat, $17.50. It was up just literally like maybe 4 or 5 hours or so. So, you know, that's what I have for today. Again, I tried to grab some different items, and I do sell a lot of the same similar items. There's other items here. It's kind of hard to decide on what to show you, and sometimes I just randomly just grab a couple. I'll go down like every 10th listing or whatever we've sold, or every 5th, or whatever the case may be, and then just pull some items. But that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some thought and some thinking. I've tried to add some more information in there to give you some better roundabout surrounding information for these items and where to find them and things like that. Well, there you have it. That's what I have for you today. Hopefully you liked the video. If you did, please hit the like button below. You can also hit the bell icon up top to be notified of when we post new videos or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.